All right, today we're going deep into the woods to talk about one of the forest's most incredible and honestly most important engineers, the pileated woodpecker. We're going to see how this bird isn't just pecking at trees, it's literally building an entire community from the inside out. And to really get it, we have to start with a little forest mystery.
So what in the world could possibly connect these three? I mean, you've got a duck, a big owl, and a tiny little bat. The answer has nothing to do with what they eat or where they hunt. It's all about where they live. And the real estate agent behind all of it? Yep, that's our woodpecker.
To really appreciate what the woodpecker does, we first have to understand a huge problem that exists in a lot of forests, and that is a serious housing crisis.
Think about it like this. Dozens and dozens of animals, owls, ducks, squirrels, bats, you name it. They all need the safety of a hollowed-out tree cavity to raise a family. But here's the catch. The huge majority of them can't make their own. They're what we call secondary cavity nesters, which means they are completely dependent on finding a pre-existing hole. You can see the problem, right? It's a high-demand, low-supply housing market out there.
And that's where our architect, the pileated woodpecker, comes in. But this is one picky builder. It doesn't just pick any old tree. No, it follows a very specific, very demanding blueprint to find the perfect construction site, which is almost always a big, dead tree, also known as a snag. So what's the first non-negotiable on the blueprint? Sheer size. The woodpecker needs a tree that is at least 21 inches in diameter. And that's not just for looks. The bird needs that much wood to be able to carve out a huge chamber on the inside without the whole thing falling apart.
You know, in forestry, there's even a standard way to measure this. It's called DBH, or diameter at breast height. It's just a consistent way to size up a tree trunk. Now, for a tree to even get this big, it often has to be somewhere between 80 and 120 years old. And that tells you something crucial right away. These birds rely on mature, older forests.
Now, here's the secret ingredient to the whole operation, and it's probably not what you think. You'd assume the woodpecker wants the strongest, most solid wood it can find, right? Wrong. It's actually the opposite. It specifically looks for trees that are infected with heart rot fungus. This fungus works its magic by softening up the dense wood on the inside, making it way easier to excavate, while leaving the outer layer of the tree hard and protective. It's the perfect natural shell.
So you put it all together and you get this incredibly specific checklist. A big, old, fungus-infected snag with the nest built way up high for safety. I mean, you can see how finding a tree that ticks every single one of these boxes is a real challenge. And it's exactly why protecting old-growth forests is so important for these guys.
Okay, so our woodpecker has found the perfect tree. Now let's dive inside the cavity itself because the engineering in here is just brilliant.
Every part of this cavity's design is for a reason. First off, the entrance isn't round. It's this very specific oblong, kind of teardrop shape. Inside, it opens up to about 8 inches wide, but then it plunges down almost 2 feet deep. Now that depth, that's a genius defense mechanism. A predator like a raccoon can reach its long arm in, but it simply can't get to the eggs way down at the bottom. And for a nest, just a soft bed of fresh wood chips left over from all that digging. So simple, so effective.
And this whole construction project is a marathon. The male is the lead contractor. He does something like 90% of all the hard labor, digging for 3 to 6 weeks straight. After all that work, the pair shares incubation duties, but the male always takes the night shift. The chicks then spend about a month inside before they have to take this incredibly courageous first flight, straight out of that high-up doorway.
Okay, here's something that can be a little confusing when you're out in the woods. Not every hole you see from a pileated woodpecker is actually a nest. These are busy birds, and they dig for a few different reasons. So let's break down how you can tell what's what. It's actually pretty easy to tell them apart once you know what to look for. A nest is going to have that single, clean, oblong entrance we talked about. A roosting cavity, which is just a safe place to sleep for the night, will often have a couple of entrances and exits for a quick getaway. And then feeding holes, they look totally different. They're usually these rough, rectangular gashes in the tree where the bird has just ripped away bark and wood to get at its favorite food, carpenter ants. So, after raising a single family which takes up a whole season, the woodpecker just leaves. It abandons the cavity. And this, right here, is where our story comes full circle. Because this one act of abandonment is what solves the entire forest housing crisis and creates this woodpecker's amazing legacy.
Hey, remember that mystery from the very beginning? Well, here's your answer.
That abandoned pileated nest becomes a 5-star home for wood ducks, for barred owls, for flying squirrels, even for whole colonies of bats. The list goes on and on. Think about that. One woodpecker pair, building one nest a year, provides critical housing for an entire community of animals that might not survive without it.
This role is so important it has a special name in ecology. As the Audubon Society puts it, the pileated is a primary cavity excavator, and its work creates a cascade of benefits for other species. This is the absolute definition of a keystone species, an animal that the entire ecosystem depends on. If you were to take it away, the whole system would change, and probably not for the better.
So, all of this brings us to the most important question, right? What does this mean for us? Now that we know just how critical this woodpecker is, how do we make sure it can keep on doing its job as the forest's master architect?
Well, the conservation plan pretty much writes itself, and it's all based on that blueprint we just talked about. We have to protect mature forests. We need to stop looking at big, dead trees, those snags, as messy or useless. We need to see them as what they are, future apartment buildings. Protecting these huge, old, fungus-infected trees is the #1 thing we can do to help not just this one incredible bird, but the whole web of life that relies on its work.
So the next time you're walking through the woods and you see a massive dead snag standing there, I hope you don't just see decay. I hope you see it for what it really is, a potential construction site, a future nursery, a cornerstone of the entire forest community, just waiting for the architect to arrive.